Hello, everyone, and welcome to our spoiler review for Zack Snyder's Justice League, a movie that was released exclusively on HBO Max. It's a 4 hour long movie, so there's a lot to spoil here. So if you haven't seen the movie, we recommend you go watch it. Spend the next, probably watch it over 2 days because that's a hard get through in one sit through, at least my opinion. So come back and then come back in a few days when this is uploaded on YouTube and watch our spoiler review. And hey, if you've seen the movie, get in the comment section and let's discuss this movie. My name's Joe Fricke, and Johnny, introduce yourself. Let people know what were your kind of opening thoughts. What were some of your favorite parts?
Opening thoughts. First of all, my name's Johnny Doop. You all should know me by now if you have watched the show. But if not, thank you for checking out our review, new people. Um, I don't know. I'm lower on Zack Snyder as a whole than I think anyone else here. So I think that kind of translated to my what I felt about the movie. If you love Zack Snyder, I could get like you like this one, but for me, it didn't fully work. There are definitely some elements that I liked. It's obviously way better than the first version we got, but I think this movie is held to a higher degree because we got the Whedon version, and everyone thinks that this one is such a big improvement on it. If this had just come out when it was supposed to, I don't think nearly as many people would be as high on it as they seem to be now. So that's kind of my like initial thoughts on it.
All right, and Bobby, same question. What are your initial thoughts? Any favorite parts that stick out?
Yeah. Well, like Johnny said, if you've watched us, I'm Bobby. You should know me by now. If not, welcome. But if you've seen our non-spoiler review, you know that surprisingly to me, I really loved this movie. All 4 hours of it. I definitely have, like, I could point out some small issues, but nothing really took me away overall from the movie. But I could definitely discuss some things that maybe put it down a little bit. Overall, my favorite things just to kind of talk about. I mean, scene wise is probably a lot in that third act fight, including Flash going back in time. That was probably one of my biggest highlights. And just the overall arc for Cyborg, giving him more of a character and being more the heart of the movie, as well as Flash. I mean, Cyborg and Flash turned into two of my favorite characters in this movie. And then the first one, Flash was kind of just like just the, he was just the comedic relief, and Cyborg was just there. And I really liked them. And then the other thing I've always liked, Ben Affleck's Batman. So he finally gave me a reason to actually own this hot toy because I like a movie with him in it finally. But I really like him. I like his dynamic with Alfred. We'll get into a lot of that. But yeah, I like a lot of this movie, and we'll get into it as we go.
All right, and Tristan, I know you don't like to ask me questions, but I'll be nice to you today and ask you kind of the same thing. Um,
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a special day for me. I've been waiting for this movie for how many years? I'm the one staunch defender of this group that really liked BBS and really liked Man of Steel too. I just was very into the direction that the DCU was going leading into this. And I mentioned the non-spoiler review, if you watched that I was pretty nervous going into this because I had a lot of expectations and I didn't know if it was going to be great. I just wanted it to not be a steaming pile of shit. And I was like, if this is just terrible, how am I even going to live this down? And I'm happy to say it was not terrible. I actually loved it, and I've rewatched it a handful of times between then and now. And every time I watch it again, all the flaws I had just kind of start to fade away. I'm excited to talk about it. I do want to tease one scene we're probably going to talk about a lot by just pulling up this little hot dog here, and we'll see where it goes.
all right. All right, yeah, and I mean, I know I kicked this off, but I would, I felt the reason I'm more hosting this is because I'm kind of in the middle. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I thought it was fine. That's kind of my general reaction. Is I thought it was fine, so I'm mostly gonna let everyone else talk, and I'm gonna try to steer the conversation. If I feel like there's something we're not talking about or something we should be talking about, I'm gonna kind of just try to steer the conversation in a way that I feel is entertaining. So I'll say first off, I'll just go around and ask what everyone's like favorite moment of the movie or favorite aspect of the movie or whatever coming out of it you were like, this is what I enjoyed the most. And for me, I would just say it's how like the difference in the Joss Whedon cut and the Snyder cut that Cyborg was, because I did not like Cyborg at all really in the Joss Whedon cut, just because he didn't really have anything to do, and I felt like he was kind of the centerpiece and heart of this movie. And I thought it was interesting to see how different a movie could be based on editing or who's in charge. So that was kind of my favorite aspect of it. And Johnny, what about you?
As far as like, I mean, it's crazy. Like a 4 hour movie about characters that I grew up loving, there should be at least one moment that I think of and I'm like, that's something I would like to go back and revisit. But there honestly isn't a single scene in this whole movie that I think is like worth watching back. But there were definitely moments that I enjoyed it, in the time. So I liked the best part of the movie. Obviously, they improved upon Cyborg, which was good from the original one, and They made Steppenwolf go from the worst villain ever put to screen to just an average villain, which was actually a huge improvement from what we saw. But both of those, I think, going back to my point, like if we just didn't get the Whedon version, I don't think those are as highly praised as they are now. So if you just look at it as a whole, I don't think either of those like completely worked well. But I think the best stuff was Superman coming back and fighting Steppenwolf. You get to really see him showcase his powers a little better than just like the really boring overlong fight in Man of Steel. You get to see Superman use his freeze breath and his laser vision and just kind of be a badass, and I like that. It's very Zack Snyder that you had to bring him back in the black suit, which doesn't make any sense, but I liked seeing Superman back and fighting. I think that was the only part that really was like, damn, I'm enjoying like this part for the movie for me.
All right, and Bobby, same question. What was your like favorite moment or favorite part or favorite thing coming out of this movie?
Yeah. So obviously I said I loved a lot about this movie. If I'm going to pick like a particular moment, like one singular thing, it's Superman. I'm not impressed. The stopping the axe with the shoulder when he comes back, and that whole scene of him coming back. But as an overall aspect of the movie, it felt to me like reading old crossover comics, especially maybe like 80s and forward crossover comics. And also it kind of felt like watching a more epic version of the like DC animated movies where you could drop it in and I didn't need to know anything prior to going into this and just set it up as Superman died from Doomsday, that story happened, and go. And I like it was a very complete its story to me as a singular movie and worked as a kind of a standalone Justice League. Like I could have watched this in a there's obviously some things that you could have cut out from this, but overall it's kind of the feel. It's like it's the Zack Snyder feel for this movie worked for me. So as a general sense is that there's a lot of individual scenes that I feel like we'll get into, but one scene, it's Superman. Overall, it's kind of the feel of the movie. I could have lived in this world for that long, and that's why it worked for 4 hours.
All right, and Tristan, same to you.
My biggest positive for this is that it just really gave a lot of extra room for these side characters. Bobby mentioned in the start, Cyborg and the Flash were just kind of like nothing characters in the original cut, and in this they really feel like fleshed out characters. They really are. Every character is given like a few good moments. We all will talk about the Flash traveling through time. I think that's a really cool moment. I think Cyborg gets a lot of cool moments, and I think that extra breathing room just gives them a lot of space to give these characters extra moments and scenes together. And I think Bobby mentioned you watch like an animated Justice League movie and you don't necessarily have to know what happened ahead of time going in, but it helps if you do. In this case, I think it stands alone really well, but I also think my biggest positive is that it feels part of a whole too. When the day it came out, I watched Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League all back to back to back and did a whole marathon of this, and it feels like a consistent story through all of that, and the tone is consistent, the style is consistent, the characters feel consistent, and I just love that it feels like one part of a whole thing while at the same time feeling very standalone. I just think I loved that element of that you can watch this by itself, but it also feels very much like a fulfillment of what was brought up in the previous movies.
Yeah, I can see all those points that everyone brought up. Johnny, any other because you're the most down on this, so like what's your biggest negative or what's the thing that really made you not enjoy this, I guess I should say?
I mean, overall, I said I'm not a big Zack Snyder guy, so I think just some elements of the film don't work because of the way he shoots other things. I think the plot is horrible. I think the villain plot of this movie is maybe the worst villain plot of any superhero movie, because the whole thing hinges on Darkseid just forgetting that the only place he never could conquer was Earth, and he just forgets about it. It would be such a just a better story if Darkseid like never came back to Earth, and Steppenwolf wants to earn his trust back by taking the one place that he never could. And they kind of set that up, but then they reveal that Darkseid just didn't know where they were. I think that is insanely stupid. I hated that. That to me was like laughably bad and made both Steppenwolf, which they improved upon, look weak, and Darkseid look like an idiot. And he's supposed to be the Thanos of the DCEU, and he looks like just a forgetful idiot who's weak in this one. But like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things of like, you get the slow motion scene, which we talked about in our Mount Rushmore with Quicksilver in Days of Future Past. That scene works because there's no other slow motion scenes in the rest of the movie. So when he does it, it really feels like, oh, like I get he's going in super speed. The Flash, I think, completely fails as a character as a whole. The portrayal of his powers, the portrayal of the character. But I think because you have all of these characters, everything they do is in slow motion all the time, that when the Flash uses his superpower, it's just dumb because the rest of the movie is also that. I think that just by getting rid of the slow motion of like all of this, like every 2 seconds on Themyscira would make the Flash look like a stronger character. And I think he looks like I don't know, it's just like kind of this showing of a filmmaker really showcasing a power versus someone who just like thinks it is cool to make things slow motion. Like it doesn't. I think it hurts the character, the Flash. I think Ezra Miller as a whole, like I like his body of work as an actor, but I think he fails completely in this movie. Every line that he says in the entire movie like is cringeworthy. I think his dialogue is bad, his delivery is bad. I think they should have just gone with either put a character in there that matches the rest of your tone. You're going for this is the Snyder cut. This is the dark, universe that I want to create. Make every character dark, or make him super charismatic because Ezra Miller can do that really well. He's great as like the charismatic super. I don't know.
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah, and Perks of Being a Wallflower. He's great in that role, and I would have liked a Flash that was more. It felt a lot like Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man, where they take someone who's super charismatic and then try to make them dorky, and it never actually works for me. So there are just a lot of elements that I think overall just doesn't work. You have a bad plot. I never care about any of these characters. You don't give me a reason to. Maybe Cyborg, but I think if I coming out of this, I was like, man, I wish I just got like a Cyborg movie. I don't need all those Cyborg scenes in the Justice League movie. That's why this thing is 4 hours long. It's just trying to do too much. But I don't know. There's just a lot of things that don't work. I hate nothing that Snyder ever does will look cool to me. Like I don't think his visuals are cool. They're not something that I like to look at. I hate big CGI set pieces, and that's basically what this movie is every time they fight. I don't care about Ben Affleck's Batman. I have no reason to. I don't care about Aquaman. This was supposed to come out before the Aquaman movie did, so I know who that character is because he had his own movie that I had some problems with, but I like Momoa, but he has nothing to do in this. Same with Wonder Woman. I don't care about her. She just straight up murders the dudes in the bank at the beginning and then turns around to this little girl and is like, yeah, you can be like me, even though I'm a god and you're just a little girl. There are so many things. We'll get into it. I don't want to go like all over the place right away, but those are just all the things that have been popping in my head, things that I think just fail. I think a lot of this movie fails, but I think overall as a whole, like I watched 4 hours of it. It wasn't like, going into it, Batman vs. Superman, I never bothered watching the extended cut, which everyone tells me is better, but Batman vs. Superman was the worst movie theater experience I've ever had in my life. I thought it was horrible. I was just like depressed after that. This was nowhere near as bad as that. I enjoyed watching it, but I had a lot of problems with it. So while I can play those up of like, I think they fail and they don't work, I enjoyed this one enough to watch it through, which, sometimes a 4-hour movie that can be really hard to do. So,
yeah, I will say one thing because you were talking about the CGI. Because I watched the movie the day it came out, and then I watched it throughout this weekend, and they released like the black and white version. and I decided to watch that for my second time to see how I felt about it. Because when they announced it, I'm like, why? Like a week after it originally came out, you're just releasing like a different version that it's just black and white. Like I still think the smarter move would have been to, wait a few months when HBO Max didn't really have anything to drop, and then just be like, oh, we have this black and white version of Justice League you can watch. But I will say, for whatever reason that I can't explain, it made the CGI look better. Like all of the CGI that I thought was just aggressively bad in, the Zack Snyder cut. I thought Darkseid looked like straight out of the CW. I thought Martian Manhunter, who we haven't talked about yet, I thought he looked straight out of the CW. But I actually, whatever reason, being converted to black and white, I thought both of them looked, good, and they didn't like stick out as being bad in the black and white version. So I will say that. Tristan, Johnny talked for a while. Do you have anything, counterpoints or anything you want to bring up of what he said?
He mentioned that he doesn't like the big CGI battles, and I kind of agree. I enjoy Man of Steel a lot, but I think the worst part by a mile is the last hour is just like this exhausting, like emotionless CGI battle, and I think this doesn't quite feel like that. I think a lot of the slow burn kind of empty space of this really gives you a chance to get some space between the battles and some space between the action. There's never quite like, an hour long just CGI nightmare fest. I think the fights are kind of condensed. You have all these, you can track the action, you can track the motion. They're not like in the middle of the city destroying like skyscrapers and millions of people getting killed. They went out of their way to make sure, okay, you're in a place where there are no people, and you're just getting these hero versus villain fights. I really enjoyed the action in this comparatively to, especially Man of Steel. I think that movie suffers in its action scenes, and I think this movie's action scenes, especially comparatively, I think you can almost see Snyder kind of addressing the complaints people had about that in Man of Steel and trying to condense the action and contain the action and make it more focused. So I thought it was a big improvement compared to what he's done before in the universe.
All right, and Bobby, do you have any counterpoints to what Johnny said or anything to add on to what Tristan said?
Yeah, basically the action in this movie. So, I mean, as an overall, I guess, negative, like the one thing that I would say is like if I were to have this movie redone to be like a perfect Justice League movie for me, it would get rid of some of Zack Snyder's flaws to me as a director and his style. I think, like Johnny said, slow motion was overused. I think it should only be used when characters are moving in super speed or to emphasize a moment or something like that. It's too overused. So like
not
overall,
a Sesame
but
Seed?
no, not a Sesame Seed. I think that's a little overdone. But overall, I actually did like. So like if a character doesn't work for you, a character doesn't work for you. But the Flash to me like worked really well. Like I found him being kind of the nerdy, awkward kid came across genuine to me versus to Johnny, it came across as someone trying to be that. And that's just when you watch it, how it comes across to you. And to me, it worked. To Johnny, it didn't. But I really liked Ezra Miller's Flash, and I'm curious to see what he does going forward. Although I'm also curious to see if they, explain his other issues going on. But the overall like negative, yeah, slow motion, like football scene, you don't need to do slow motion every single time that he is making a move or hurdling, because when you slow mo a guy hurdling someone, you can see that he's about 5 feet to the side of him instead of going over top of him. That's a problem. But those are like little things that as I'm watching, it's like, yeah, that's kind of annoying, but not too bad. But to me, the action was blocked and was choreographed really well. I actually really liked a lot of the action scenes. They did not feel like Man of Steel, which I really like Man of Steel, but I mean, that action in that final act is just kind of, it is a blur. It's just kind of going through buildings and doing random stuff. You could track everything that was going on, and Zack Snyder gave everyone to do in each fight scene. Like it wasn't like in the original Justice League where Cyborg literally had nothing to do. They send Flash away because they don't have him do the time travel, so he goes to that family. Like Flash is doing something very, very specific to the goal of what they're trying to do to beat Steppenwolf, and that leads to that time travel moment. Cyborg is the key, and that's what he's doing. He's getting to the mother box, and you have people that are just basically trying to delay Steppenwolf, and I think that was all choreographed well, and I was following it, and it didn't just come across as like visual noise. So I really did like the action instead of it didn't. It didn't play off as just a big CGI fest to me, basically.
All right, yeah. Let's see, what other topics?
I do have some complaints I could bring up if you guys want to hear the negatives from a diehard fan of this franchise.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I mentioned I've been going on and on about how much I think it really enhances some of the side characters, especially Flash and Cyborg, who I think needed a lot of time because they're newer characters to people, but I think that came at a cost of a lot of the other characters. Like, especially Superman, I think is barely in the movie, and I think it's intentional because there was originally going to be a second movie that I'm sure would have had a lot more Superman in it. But I think especially like Aquaman is like a nothing character almost in this movie. He has a couple of cool moments, but he's the one element that I honestly think Joss Whedon did a little bit better. I think his version of Aquaman was a bit more entertaining, and you can really get his personality that shines through. And in this, like I said, I went into it nervous, and you get to that scene where they introduce Aquaman, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like he's walking out to the pier. There's this really cool like folk song kind of playing, and I'm like, wow, what a cool character introduction. And then of course the scene keeps going, and you see someone walking up and picking up his sweater and sniffing it, and they're singing this like foreign language poem about how Aquaman's coming to save them, and I'm like, what am I even watching? Like, is this really going to be the movie that I'm seeing? Because if they kept that scene, like if that was what the whole movie was, I would have been like, wow, they really dropped the ball here. I just think there's a couple moments like that where I'm like, you could have done a better job with some of these other characters. Aquaman in particular, I think Lois Lane as well is like, why is she in the movie almost? Like she's just spending the whole time mourning Superman, and I feel like that's not the Lois Lane that he established in Man of Steel, who was very assertive and very forward and was able to, on her own accord, uncover Kal-El, uncover Clark Kent, and uncover the whole mystery. It wasn't like she was just some, I don't know, victim. And I think in this, she's very much played as a victim. She's very much played as like a person who can't handle her grief and a person who isn't able to function under her grief. And I just don't think that's quite the Lois Lane that he portrayed as. I think his version of Lois Lane would have been the one who goes to work and works through her grief. And in the back of her head, she's feeling a lot and she's not expressing it necessarily. And I think having Lois be like this mopey person who doesn't go to work and is just going and mourning Superman every single day, it doesn't quite feel like the Lois that is in this franchise. So I think a lot of the side characters are enhanced a lot, but I do think a lot of the already established characters, like Batman, is barely in the movie. Bruce Wayne's in it a lot, but I don't think you get quite a lot of Batman until the end. So I think you could have, with 4 hours, I feel like you could have done more with some of these characters that we already know.
Yeah. Yeah, Amber Heard has an accent too.
Yeah, that really threw
weird.
me out a lot of the movie, like, because it's like, why? Number one, like, she lives in Atlanta. She doesn't need a British accent. That's, especially when Jason. I mean, I know Jason Momoa didn't really like grow up in Atlantis, but Willem Dafoe's character did grow up in Atlantis, and he doesn't have a British accent. And
yeah, it's not like Star Wars where most of the villains are British, like, and you kind of just accept that, like, it makes sense to it. But like, I think what they were going for originally, Snyder wanted her to have an accent, so they did it with an accent, and then she didn't in the Whedon cut, even though it's like the same scenes. So they clearly ADR'd her, just doing her normal voice. And then in Aquaman, they were like, well, the version that came out of Justice League, you don't have an accent. But then Snyder was just like, we're going to go with the accent because that's what I originally intended, even though it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you know what's weird is how you mentioned they must have ADR'd her. They reshot scenes that they didn't have to reshoot. They could have ADR'd her, and they actually, like, if you look at the two versions, they either used completely different takes from the same shoot, or they reshot it from different camera angles slightly and from different takes of like scenes, because it's really weird. Like, they did reshoot. So the scene with Bruce, like, on the plane with Alfred, like in the very beginning of the movie, they have a similar conversation a little bit, but it's just extended a lot more in the Snyder cut. They reshoot that entire thing with Ben Affleck after his issues, and you can tell because he has kind of the bloated face in that. And it's like, you just reshot it to make the lighting a little bit different so that it's shot more like a comedy where it's very bright lighting, and you change the dialogue just a little bit, but it played kind of the same way. It's like, why did you do that?
Well, I think part of it, because I know the same thing happened with Ron Howard and Solo, is for a director to get directing credit, they have to direct a certain percentage of the movie. So I wonder, I wonder how much of that was just they had to reshoot it just so.
But Zack Snyder got the credit.
Oh, he still has.
Well, like, that's my thing. So like Zack Snyder
doesn't make any sense.
Does he? Really? I mean, he shot the whole movie. Like, everything we saw, they shot basically the epilogue was like the only new thing other than fixing the special effects, like making Steppenwolf look better. What shocked me about just hearing that was I thought they went back and just shot a bunch of scenes, because there was no way that Zack Snyder, for the first movie of the Justice League, planned on doing a 4-hour cut. But no, this was like, outside of the epilogue, he basically planned on the Justice League being a 3.5-hour movie, which is absurd to me.
Well, you know what?
This is the first of a trilogy.
Yeah, you could easily like. Here's the thing: like, I loved watching a 4-hour version of this, but it felt like an extended cut of a theatrical release where
Yeah.
because you can get rid of most of that epilogue. You can get, and there's a lot of scenes like the singing and things where he just extended it basically because he had it. And like, this is an idea I had, and like, like you can easily get this down to below 3 hours.
Yeah, this is definitely a movie that just had all of the deleted scenes in it. Like normally, if like Zack Snyder, if he released this theatrically, obviously the epilogue wouldn't have been in there, and then just there would have been deleted scenes. I don't know which ones, but every movie has deleted scenes. So
and it's not even that you need to delete it, but just change the pacing of some of the edits. You don't need Bruce Wayne. Like, even though I liked seeing it just because it makes it feel a little bit more epic in scale, you don't need Bruce Wayne taking 10 minutes to get to Aquaman. You don't need the singing scene. You don't need every single thing that Flash does in slow motion when he does it, when he saves with the whole poppy seed. And like, you can cut some things and you can make this down and cut and like make it a little tighter, but I did enjoy seeing everything that he shot. Like
I think if this came out in theaters, there's no way it would have been 4 hours. He probably would have had it right around 3, just probably like 2:59, just south of 3. And I think that is definitely here. And I think the best comparison is like the Lord of the Rings. I recently, for the first time in how many years, watched a theatrical version of Lord of the Rings. I normally watch the extended cuts, and you can tell comparing those two, like the extended versions have a lot of stuff you don't necessarily need in there. Like, just if you're looking at like the pacing of a movie, like the plotting of a movie, there's stuff that you don't necessarily want. But if you were like a diehard Lord of the Rings fan, you want to see all that cool stuff. You want to see the mouth of Sauron. You want to see Saruman's last scene in Return of the King. You want to see those extra kind of scenes. And even though it doesn't necessarily help the pacing, doesn't necessarily help like the plotting, it's there for the fans. And this definitely feels to me like a director's cut. Like, he shot scenes that he knew would probably not have made the movie. Every movie shoots scenes that ultimately don't make the movie. And this to me just feels like, okay, we're going to put everything in there, just whether it's for Zach, whether it's for the fans, just the same way you do any director's cut, you're going to put what you have and put it in the movie, and that's for 4 hours, especially. I feel like it flew by shockingly. Like, I never had a moment where I was like, all right, let's like get to the end here. Like, how much longer do I have? I spent the whole time very engaged with what was going on. I'm very engaged with the visuals and the characters. I felt for 4 hours I was there the whole time,
And I was too, and I was surprised by that. And I was very surprised. Like I said, I watched with my wife, Jen, who does not love superhero movies. Like, she'll watch the Marvel movies and she'll get entertained, but she checks out of superhero movies a lot. And she watched the entire 4-hour movie without asking to stop she was locked into the characters and to the story and everything. So it is engaging. Like, even to someone who's not a fan of these movies, it at least engaged her in a way. And you can quantify that however you want, but to me, it locked me in. I didn't feel like I really wanted to get to, all right, well, let's just get to the next fight, or let's get to the end of this fight, or whatever. And as far as like why he included, I think a lot of that extra stuff, it's because there was a big process of, well, at first, let's release it as a mini series. We're going to do those parts, we're going to be episodes, but that created a legal problem of, well, if we make a movie and then make it a mini series, we have to pay people differently as if it was making a whole separate thing. So they decided to make it a movie. And that worked for me. That's fine, especially watching it at home where you can pause it whenever you want. But as far as like answering the question of maybe why he left a lot of stuff in there that maybe wouldn't be in a movie version, he kind of created episodes.
I think though too, like, I don't like the overall plan that Snyder had. Basically, like, going into it, this was your first movie. It's them setting up the Justice League and then fighting Steppenwolf. The next movie is Darkseid, and the third movie is Batman bones Lois Lane, so then Superman turns evil, and you get this like in Justice League. That's literally what the plan was. You have the pregnancy test shown in this, but they don't.
No, I know. I told you that, but he's changed a little bit of what that whole story was.
I think that is canon. I think that is 100% what they were going to do with this, because it's very Zack Snyder. But I also think, like, make the first movie Batman recruiting the Justice League. This was supposed to be your introduction to Aquaman, Cyborg, and the Flash. We already had Wonder Woman. Superman's dead. And you haven't really gotten a ton from Batman outside of one movie. I think they could have done one whole Justice League movie of Batman. You really get to know his character better. You get to showcase Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne and Batman. And the whole movie is him recruiting those characters, and you have all of their origin stories. You have those included in it, and it ends with Batman, you know, maybe them all suiting up and then about to go on some mission or something like that. Like, maybe that's non-traditional, but like Zack Snyder wants to take these chances. I think it would have been cool to do a movie that doesn't have some huge epic fight scene with the world on the line at the end, or maybe you do, but you have a smaller scale villain at the end that shows that they can work together and take him out. The next movie is Steppenwolf, and you've already introduced your characters. You can do the Steppenwolf storyline in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever you want to do. Actually focus on that, so I'm not watching 4 different movies in one, because I felt like every time I was getting like the Cyborg origin story or the Flash scenes, it never felt like the same movie coherently to me. So I would have liked one movie of focusing on those, one movie of the Steppenwolf thing, and then the third movie should have been Darkseid, and you don't have any of this Superman turning evil stuff, because you already have one scene of him fighting them. That's all you need. You don't need to, like, you know, make like this Injustice storyline and have the awful epilogue scene at the end with the Joker and Batman telling him he's going to fucking kill him, which is, I think, the worst line in any comic book movie ever put to screen. Other than Martha, probably. So
As soon as I heard that line, I was like, well, Johnny's going to hate that one.
Yeah,
that was such a
I'm
bad
gonna fucking
line.
kill you.
Like, so dumb. Like, I don't know. It's just Zack Snyder thinks that's so cool, but man, that's so bad.
I think Jared Leto's Joker is sometimes entertaining,
I think Jared Leto's Joker, though, in that scene worked. I liked him in that. Yeah. It's obviously much better than the version we got.
He's still very Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
is his portrayal.
All I see is Jim Carrey every time his Joker's on the screen, and I don't like it. We do have a live comment. Michael said in the Twitch chat, I don't know if this is true or not, but he says, fun fact, 24 minutes and 7 seconds of the Snyder Cut is in slow motion, which is approximately 10% of the film.
That's not even a lot.
I think that's right.
That's a lot. Yeah, that 10% is a lot, Tristan. And like,
first of all, 10% is a lot. Second of all, 24 minutes is a lot for like a normal film. Could you imagine a 2-hour movie with half, like a quarter of it being in fucking in slow motion is wild. But yeah, again, like that hurts the Flash's character to me, because his power never seems cool, because everyone else is just fucking sliding on their knees under doors in slow motion. I hear Michael laughing in the background. But anyway, okay, so the thing I want to kind of focus on and talk about, because we all kind of mentioned it as something we liked, but I have a lot of issues with some of the character elements of Cyborg. So, Tristan, I guess I don't know. You just ate a hot dog. So, Bobby, I know you love this movie. What are your what were your thoughts on Cyborg? How they did him in this?
The thing is, I know where you're going with this, so I could either start by basically defending what you're about to say, or just say my overall thoughts. So overall, I thought, even though he had to include some, like, a couple cliches to kind of get it across, and I didn't love the slow motion in the football scene, I liked the idea of his story, and I liked his arc as a character, going from the kid who is the football star who feels kind of neglected by an absent dad, being brought back to life with his mom dead, and basically having to find a new identity for himself and what he is to the world. Like, his whole, like, what he was as a person is gone. He can't go back to that, and now he has all this power. And I like that whole kind of the philosophy of his struggle there, and the whole scene of him giving the money to the waitress who was struggling with the ATM. Like, I really like.
We'll talk about scene, that.
Which, look, I get it. Like, you can point out things, but I think that worked to me, and I think that played well and showed, because if you give most people that power, they're gonna do kind of the wrong thing with it, and that at least showed that his character, he has the right character for having this power, even though that may cause issues or something, like to the bank or to whatever. But he has the right idea. I don't give a fuck about the
bank. He has the power to fix the entire world. You can take wealth and provide it to people, and instead he does it for like one person in the scene. I don't blame the character, like, whatever, but that's Zack Snyder not fully understanding what he just did. Like, you can basically fix the world's problems if you're Cyborg, like, easily, and he just does it once. And I think he's a supervillain. I think Cyborg is a supervillain.
You can't just give everyone money. Like, you're gonna then cause government.
You're Cyborg.
No, sure,
because then take from the rich and give to the
You then
poor.
you then cause governments to completely collapse,
Yeah,
and then
which
you have
some
then you
should.
have everyone who probably shouldn't have the wealth that they do have it. Like no, like yes,
Cyborg has
you
the
have
power
to be
of every
choosy,
nuclear weapon in
and
the
you
world.
have to remember that
He should release
like
those all into space.
Johnny. You
He's
have to
an
also
18-year-old
remember
kid who's
he's a
OP.
17 or 18-year-old kid at this point.
He's in college, so he's like, well,
Yeah,
he's a
he's
starter
got
in
too
college,
many-
so he's like 2021, maybe 22.
He's got too many powers, and my thing is this. Bobby mentioned this.
It was
but, and we talked
Gotham,
about
wasn't
this
it?
before.
High school.
No, because it was
But it was
Gotham
after
City
that,
University.
right?
It was Gotham City
Gotham
University
City.
because they were
But
playing
still,
against
that's funny.
Wisconsin.
Okay, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever. He's a young kid.
So this dude's way past the point of being mad at his dad for not showing up to a game. He's not 16. But, okay, dad doesn't show up to the game. You already have that. You show, okay, Cyborg, he doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. He's sad he's not there. He can somehow spot that from the field. And
yeah,
every
I was just thinking
motion
about
scene,
that.
look at him. But also, then you have this horrific car accident, which is just them talking, and then a car hits him to give you like a little jump or whatever. And then Cyborg is blaming his father for this incident when basically, like, I really wish they just had a line of dialogue like, Dad, Mom can't drive well. Like, you might as well have had that in there because it would have made more sense. But, like, just throw something in there of the mom goes to call the dad, or the dad calls her and she looks at her phone and then she crashes into something. Like, not they just get T-boned by someone and then he blames the dad. You just set up too many things. Like, you just can have him not feeling close to his dad. He doesn't like his dad because he's never there for him, and then he's mad at his dad for turning him into a monster. You then also don't need Cyborg blaming his dad for his mom's death. Like, it's just everything on top of each other, and it doesn't need all that. It's just like the movie's problem as a whole is trying to do way too many things and tell too many stories, and I think Cyborg's origin is kind of evident on that. But yeah, I think you can redistribute wealth. That's like an insane superpower. You can do so many good things, and he's just like, I'm going to do it once. And then I'm going to go back to sulking inside. I hate that.
He's just getting started. Like, he's been Cyborg for like how long, and now he's just practicing his powers. Like, I'm sure at some point he will try and do it in a larger scale, but he's at this point, he's like, okay, I'm going to practice. I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to test my limits on this one person in this one situation where he's going to see, okay, can I do this? And then he does do it. And I think if you do it at too large of a scale, it's at a point where he's going to get caught. He's going to get investigated. And I think you do it for like one person at a time here and there. That's something that could slip under the radar of the bank. So I think if he just goes out to this bucket, I'm going to get everybody $1 million. Like, that's not going to last. The bank's going to be like, okay, give us our money back. This is not happening. But you slip it through the cracks one person at a time, you can do that.
Yeah, you take all those nukes and you nuke the people trying to stop you. You have the ultimate powers. You're a god. You're better than Superman.
It's positioned in the movie as while he's listening to his dad's message of like kind of what he can do. So it is showing him how he had tested all his powers.
Yeah, you need like this bull fighting a bear scene that's really bad.
I mean, yeah, that it's very Zack Snyder style. If you don't like his style, you're not going to like that. But yeah, you literally have a bull market and a bear market representation of the stock market. Like, okay, I get it. That's a little over dramatic, but it's fine. It works for me enough.
Like, I feel like that's if you're seeing Superman fly for the first time and he's still struggling with it. He's like jumping a bit. He's not quite flying. And you're like, Superman can fly. He can do whatever he wants. He can fly into space. Why isn't he flying into space? And you're like, well, because he's Superman. He just started. He just got his powers. He can't do everything you can do. He's still
practicing. But Superman's not redistributing wealth, all right? That's a common thing that can easily be like used. Like, that's not something that you can't fucking understand. Like, oh yeah, I'm just learning how to fly and I've never done that. Okay. But like,
birds fly all the time.
He has before hacked an ATM.
This dude doesn't pay attention fucking econ.
All right, one thing I do want to go back to.
I would have liked. Why wasn't it Bruce Wayne's money? It should have said something. I think that at least would have worked as like a funny joke, and I could have forgiven it. Like if it was like, oh, taken from Bruce Wayne's like personal savings and given to this person. I think that would have been funny, and I think that would have been. You could even do that as a way of Batman realizing who Cyborg is because he's like, who just hacked into my system? Like you could have had something along those lines and had that follow the plot, but instead it's this throwaway scene, and I think it's like a super important thing that like could have been cool, and they just are like, it's just a throwaway scene because we're not gonna, do it. But like I nitpick little things like that, and they bug the shit out of me. So that scene bugged me.
That is a very Johnny issue.
Speaking of nitpicking, I went back to something Johnny said, and it's been bothering me ever since because I fully agree with Johnny. So in that scene where Gotham City University, like where Victor Stone is playing football, they're playing the University of Wisconsin, which unless it's an out of conference game, would be a Big Ten matchup, and Gotham City University is usually like an East Coast team. So in my mind, they probably exist instead of Rutgers. Rutgers does not exist because Rutgers is in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
And they got killed.
Well, yeah, so Gotham City University exists and Rutgers doesn't. Rutgers Stadium holds 52,000 people. If his dad was not at that game, he would not notice.
You wouldn't fucking see it. It's so dumb. I hate that in movies. They do that in a lot of sports movies, and it's so dumb in this one.
So
that bugs me.
To be fair, as someone who's played sports in and then have played in like at the Joe, because of just tournaments and whatever. If you know where a family, this is just to counteract a really random dumb point, but if you know where someone is supposed to be sitting, you can from the ice or from the stands look up there. It's not hard.
But not when it's 52,000 people.
Yeah. No, you can. If you know, like especially families are gonna be near like the end zone. Like he knows, okay, the home end zone. They're on this corner. They sit here every game. I'm gonna know where they are. I go see them after the game every time. Like whatever.
I think it would have worked. Like you don't need to have him see into the thing. My problem, like Zack Snyder is very on the nose with everything. That's why you need like literally a 3-minute exposition scene from Wonder Woman explaining what the mother boxes are. Like you can't just kind of let people figure things out. Like show the empty seat next to the mom. You don't need him actually looking up to it. And then they're fighting in the car over it, arguing in the car. And then she's like, I'm going to call your father. And then they get hit. But like any sort of subtlety, Zack Snyder just sucks out of every scene. So like Tristan said, like, it's like if Superman started flying, like he didn't do this in the movie, but every scene to me in this one felt like if Superman started flying, you would need to cut to someone and be like, wow, that's amazing. He can fly. Like, but you don't need that scene. Like you just need the scene to kind of show you that. And I think this has kind of a lot of little areas like that. Also, Wonder Woman learned what the mother boxes are from looking at like hieroglyphics on a wall and then knew like this whole crazy story. Like, damn, that's wild. Those are some good ass cave drawings.
I'll admit that I think the Cyborg setup is a little bit of a mess, but I do think his arc overall is pretty effective. He thinks he's a kind of a monster. He thinks he doesn't have a place in the world, and by the end, he realizes like, oh, I'm not broken. I'm not like some failed experiment. I'm a person with value.
And I liked that stuff. I think the setup of how he became Cyborg was dumb, but I think everything after that, I really liked his character. So if they did like again, like I watched it, and I would have liked just like an origin story of Cyborg and kind of seen him on his own and do his thing, and then maybe I don't have the problem of, he's just starting off, so whatever. But I don't know. By the end of this movie, he's hacking into things and doing all this stuff with technology that he just grows so fast from it being like, oh, he's new to this, to being he's really doing everything that he possibly can and being like the strongest character he can. Same with the Flash. Like you're just meeting the Flash, and then by the end of the movie, he's already doing what they do in Endgame. Like Endgame took 20-something movies to set up them being able to go back in time and set up the universe and, retract like these horrible things that have happened. And in this, it's like you meet the Flash, this like here, point A, and then point B is him running as fast as he can to revive Superman. And then point C is him running as fast as he can to reverse time to stop this horrible thing from the whole team dying. And it's just everything happens too fast. I don't need that all in one movie that's about a bunch of characters. Have like that one point that they get to. I don't need step 2 and step 3 and step 4 until they get into their final form all in the first Justice League movie. And I feel like they kind of did that.
And I think that's more of a personal like preference of what you would do if you were kind of creating your version of this universe. Because yes, this universe in general it moved at a very quick pace. It went from Man of Steel right to Batman v Superman, and they probably should have had realistically a Man of Steel 2 and a Batman movie. Then you should have had like you can do that, but if you're gonna do it the way they did it, I'm okay with that entire plot line of the Flash. I think that worked for me because he's basically establishing early in the movie, I know that when I run this fast, time does weird things, as he says, or whatever, however he says that. Time gets a little odd. So we know that he's been Flash enough, because this version does not establish that Flash is like a rookie, like in the original one. He's not. He has been the Flash for some time. He's been a vigilante. He's been working with his speed and his powers. He already has, this crazy suit and everything. So he knows what his speed can do, and he has rules. So that worked for me because I know the Flash as a character. A lot of people know at least the general concept of him, so you can introduce that stuff, and that works enough for me in this version. So, and I know Johnny's not on screen, but that's why that did work for me, basically.
Yeah, I want to bring that up too. I think what Marvel does differently is they had a lot of like B and C type characters they don't necessarily know the powers of. Like you have to establish who Thor is and what his powers are. You have to kind of establish who Tony Stark is and what his role in the story is. I think DC's in a unique place. Like you have Superman, you have Batman. People know who those are. They're ingrained into culture enough that you don't have to really establish who they are. Even like the Flash, people know him from pop culture. He runs fast. That's all you really got to figure out about the Flash. I think Aquaman, people know Aquaman, even it's just from like Entourage and like memes and stuff like that. People know, oh, he lives in Atlantis. He swims around. He's strong. Like you don't need to get a lot out of these characters. You'd have to know like the general idea of who they are, what their powers are, what is their role in the story, why do they need to be here. And I think this movie, especially in the action scenes towards the end, lets you realize like all of these characters had to be here. Like they wouldn't have won if they didn't have one of these characters here. They would have lost if Flash wasn't there. They would have lost if Wonder Woman wasn't there to hold off Steppenwolf. They would have lost if Superman didn't show up at the end. I think every character feels like a vital part of the story.
Yeah,
he's the only
they didn't
one.
do
He doesn't
anything
do
with
anything.
water. He just stabbed
He
guys
kind
with a
of stops the
pitchfork.
water that one time when the
in the harbor
little bat crawler is gonna climb up, and he stops
he
the water.
saved the
But he
whole
doesn't
team.
even
They
do
would have
that
been dead
fully.
without him.
Yeah, one time, but like for the it
I
would
think
have
they
been
would've-
cooler if like he had been drowning Steppenwolf and then
Maybe not bad.
and then like Wonder Woman cut his head off or whatever while he was drowning or some shit. But like yeah, Aquaman was just there to stab people with pitchforks and then just say like one-liners.
Yeah, Aquaman
And
is
I
the
actually
weakest
the
part, I
one
think.
scene that Joss Whedon had in the original that I would have actually liked to be in this was the Lasso of Truth scene. I thought that was a good little fun scene with Aquaman and Wonder Woman when he starts just like talking, and then you realize the Lasso of Truth is on.
I thought that was really funny, but I don't think it fit this movie. It fit a Joss Whedon movie.
One person, like the very on the nose thing. Maybe fit just as much in this and any of the Flash lines. Like, okay, here's my thing too, because I went out to grab a beer and Michael's sitting on the couch watching us, and I asked him, okay, Michael, what's like the one thing you need me to address for you? And this is what he told me, and I agree because we talked about this. The scene at the end when the Flash is going back in time, right, is one of the worst scenes I think ever put to screen because I don't need, because of the whole thing, get rid of Barry Allen fucking talking to himself. Every line that he said, Barry, you need to go fast. You need to break. You need to go faster than you've ever gone. Like, we know that. Like, you've set this up. You don't need to tell me that. It's just awful. The entire dialogue. Cut everything that Barry Allen actually says to himself in that scene, and I think it's done really well. I think visually it works. But I think the dialogue in that scene is like, I was watching that and I was like, this is horrible. Everything that he's saying to himself is so dumb. Like, I'm not a moron. Like, you can't be like, okay, most people in the world know who the Flash is. First of all, that's not true at all. The Flash, I would say, isn't any more.
They know that he goes fast.
Iron Man was when that universe was started.
That's actually very, very not true. Not at all. Iron Man
was in the Avengers. Like, the Flash people think maybe we are big into the Flash. They're comic book fans, but I would say that most people in the world, maybe outside of he can run fast, don't know anything about the character Barry Allen. Most people, if you say what's the Flash's name, they don't know Barry Allen. Like, they don't know how he got his powers. They don't know about his dad. They don't know anything about that stuff. So you have this character that you're saying we're going in with the assumption that people know who he is, but by the end of it, we have to do the scene assuming that no one understands what this character is about to do. Like, it's just tonally, it's all over the place in terms of that. Like, yeah, okay, I can accept that you're going into it you'll know everything you need to know about the Flash, and we won't get too deep into his story. But then by the end of it, you need this scene where he's like, you gotta go fast, you gotta run, you gotta do this, you gotta. It's so dumb and bad. It doesn't fit. Like, it's kind of it takes away from the argument that you guys were making of people know who these characters are. Like,
I'll address that and
Yeah, I
say,
was gonna say,
like,
you can
I
say
think-
something, Tristan.
I think people know, like, the general idea. Oh, the Flash, he runs fast, and I think this movie does a good job of saying, like, of what you said. People don't necessarily know who Barry Allen is. And I think this establishes who Barry Allen as a character is in this universe, and I think it establishes, like, the limits of his powers. It establishes what, like, they give that voiceover at the end, not for people like us, for people who know, the Flash is the guy who runs fast. But then that dialogue shows he, like, established even earlier in the movie, like, oh, if I run too fast, time gets a little weird, and then it comes back again, like, oh, this is it. I'm finally breaking my one rule that I've said I wouldn't break, and if my dad could see me now, like, all that kind of stuff kind of pays off for people who know, oh, the Flash is the guy that runs fast. They don't necessarily know, like, the details of the Flash, and I think this does a good job of enhancing those details,
I would
enhancing the
say it
character,
does it, and
enhancing his powers.
I'm gonna prove it right now. I'm pretty sure my mom's in the chat, so I'm just gonna ask her really quick. Mom, why is Barry Allen's dad in jail? That's a very key point of the Flash's backstory.
But it's not what we were saying.
But that's a very key point of Barry Allen's backstory, and the whole reason he goes into criminal justice.
And they say it in the movie because that's not a very well known thing for the general pop culture.
They say it once in the movie, but
yes,
I remember
they do.
when I watched the black and white version, I was thinking I couldn't remember them saying that. So
they do it.
He has one
twice.
throwaway line that is like, "You're in prison for killing mom," which I don't think you're guilty
she says she
for.
doesn't remember, but I didn't. When I asked her, I didn't really think they.
Right.
No, my thing is this: the Flash isn't some super popular character. He's been around for a long time. He's in a lot of the Justice League stuff, but like, the Flash comics aren't huge. Like, he was never put to screen because people didn't necessarily know about how to do super speed. But he was also not put to screen because you have Batman, you have Superman, you have Aquaman, you have Wonder Woman. Those are all far more famous DC characters. The Flash is maybe in the top 10, like nowadays, definitely, because he was in this, and the show, I think, really helped. But if you get rid of the Flash show, I think the majority of people, like the general audience going to this movie, don't really know anything about the Flash other than he can run fast. But that's like going into a Batman movie. No one goes into a Batman movie not knowing, okay, his parents are dead. Like, it'd be like going into a Batman movie only knowing, oh, he dresses like a bat. That's the only thing I know about him. That's what I think a lot of people know about the Flash. Like, he runs fast. He wears a red suit. Like, they don't know anything of his origin. They don't know how he got his powers. They don't know this stuff. So I think you do need to address that, like, in your movie a little better. And I don't think they did that in this. Like, yeah, we all know who he is, so we don't need that. But Zack Snyder, like, you're making a Justice League movie. At some point, you got to make a movie for every single person. Like, and I don't think he really does that. He hints at these things. It's like why Batman v Superman, having the Flash come back in time and warn Batman in that awful scene, didn't make sense to, like, the majority of people. Like, we got it. Like, okay, it's a reference to, like, Injustice. Superman's bad. Okay. But, like, most people don't know what the fuck he's talking about. And I think that has to do with, like, a lot of Zack Snyder's points in this. And I think that's why a lot of this universe doesn't work for the majority of people. Because if you're not familiar with these characters, I can't imagine that you watch this and you know much about them. Like Bobby said, Jen watched and she liked it, but I don't think most people had that experience. I really don't.
Yeah, it's interesting with the whole Flash. I mean, that whole conversation is basically coming up because of an argument that we made that we were addressing a whole different point that Johnny was making. So it went down a whole big rabbit hole. But the thing with the Flash, with the voiceover, to get to that specifically, again, it's more of, did it work for you or did it not? But I think it plays into what they did with the Flash in the movie. I think it is paying off kind of how they established his character and what he has said that he struggled with in the movie with his dad and with trying to be the best that he can be and everything, and have his dad kind of accept him as that, and that he's not wasting his life.
What does that scene have to do with his dad?
That's,
I mean, he literally says it out loud.
He literally says it.
He says it out loud, and it's dumb. It's not
but like,
justified.
because also his dad can't hear him, so like.
Yeah, his dad doesn't know.
So like,
But he's-
I'm with Johnny on this scene. I think the dialogue is bad because he's like talking to his dad, and the only reason he's like saying, "Oh, Dad, don't worry, I was like a good person," but his dad can't
This
hear him.
happens in a
So
lot of
like, who
movies.
is he talking to?
And his dad never doubts him once in the movie. It's not like he's going to visit his dad and his dad is like, "I'm so disappointed that you're not doing things." Like his dad is fully supportive of him.
No, he kind of
definitely
does.
do that.
He definitely does do that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, he does.
If he does, it's not very memorable. You guys have actually rewatched it, but I didn't ever get that.
The very first watch, I got that whole point. I mean, that's like, so maybe you don't like the voiceover, you think it's corny, like that's fine. But as far as like, it is actually trying to complete a story, whether you like that or not, that's fine. Whether you think it worked or not, but he goes to his dad. And basically his dad's like, "Oh, well, you're getting another of these side jobs. Why are you wasting your life? Why are you trying to go into criminal justice just to get me out? Stop wasting your life and like be the best you can be and stop doing what you're doing." So he's trying to say what I'm doing is right. What I'm doing is working. You know, I am.
That conversation is about like him getting a job.
Yeah, but that conversation also implies that his dad has like faith in him and believes in him. It's not like his dad's like, "You're a fucking like burnout." His like,
"You're a failure."
His dad is saying, "You are a good person. You are better than the life you're living." And then at the end, he's like, "Dad, I'm a good person. I'm living a good life." It's like, yeah, his dad already
he should
knows
be proving that to himself,
he's saying,
not to his
he says,
dad.
I'm one of the best of them, as in like I'm already doing the best. I'm doing the best thing. I'm with the best. Like that's what they're trying to get at. If that doesn't work, that's fine. But like, to me, I got it. I got the point, and it worked enough. Like, okay, the path that I am taking, that I want to take. It's like your parents saying you should be a doctor and you don't, and you want to be a musician or an artist or whatever. So he's saying what I'm doing, which right now is being a speedster vigilante and trying to get you out of prison, is me being the best I can be, and I saved the world because of it. And just know that I was part of this that saved everything, or that was fighting with the best of the best. That's what he's trying to get at. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine.
It doesn't.
But
I just think there's just ways to improve on the story that like could have really fleshed out some of those scenes better if you focused on them. Like I said, like Superman doesn't come into this movie for 2.5 hours. So what they could have done is the first Justice League movie is Batman recruiting the team, and the plan is to revive Superman, and the last fight you get is Superman coming back and fighting them, and he doesn't turn good. And then the movie ends with Superman. Maybe he goes off with Lois at the end, and that's your ending of the movie, but the team is kind of torn apart. Then you have the next movie of, you get a full movie of Superman. You get a little more fleshed out scene of him talking to Lois and becoming himself again. Then you introduce Steppenwolf and stuff. And I think you could have done that, because then at least at the end of one full movie, the Flash does something he's never done before. He runs faster than he ever has before to be able to revive Superman. But like, I don't think it works when you do that twice in the same movie. It takes away the stakes. Like, oh, we've already seen him do something he's never done, and now he's doing something that he's never done, like not even 2 hours later. I think that's why that scene does kind of fail ultimately, also because it's just like, we don't need to see are there any other superhero movies that you can point to that like has that one big moment of them overcoming something, and then you have like 2 hours left of the movie, and then they have to do the same thing again at the end.
Most don't have 2 extra hours, you know.
And that's my thing. Or like just like it'd be like, it's like, I don't know. To me, it reminded me, okay, at the end of the first Iron Man movie, he defeats Jeff Bridges by flying up super high, right? Yeah. So he flies up high, and then he kind of freezes, and the thing fails. Imagine if that scene was done exactly the same way an hour before that, halfway through the movie, and then at the end, he just flies a little bit higher. That's what it felt like, and it was like, you take away any like cool like aspect of the character by doing that twice in the same.
To me, movie. It played more like a tease, because it was more of, look, I know if I go too fast, time does this. And by him saying like you know, Batman, because what you're pointing at is him saying you have to run faster than you've ever run, type of thing.
Twice.
But right, but what Flash says as a response, more of his dialogue is more of, I don't want to go that fast because of this rule and because I know what can happen. Like the way he can run in, I don't think it's played up to be this big major how fast he can go in the reviving Superman's scene. It's more of, all right, do you have enough?
Come out and tell him that. Like that's
Yeah,
what
but
Batman says to him, and then he makes a big deal of it, and then that's the whole scene.
I
And
don't
then
think
it
they, I
ends
don't
with
think
him
they make
touching the thing.
to me it didn't they didn't make that big of a deal of like this is so amazingly
Alright, I think we've
fast
been
and
talking
like,
about Flash.
crazy
You
thing.
know,
Yeah, we've been doing the Flash
yeah,
a
we've been
lot,
talking
but
about,
basically
I want to move on to my least favorite aspect of this movie, and
Let's
that
hear it.
is the Martian Manhunter. Every scene with the Martian Manhunter could have been cut, and this movie would have
that's
been
mine too.
far better off. So first you have the ruined scene between Martha and Lois, which is a great scene, and then it turns out
And it's not her.
like because that's the thing is the relationship with
dope.
General Swanwick or Swanick or whatever. Like you could have just had that scene with him and Lois, and like because they still have a certain level of a relationship that I felt like the scene would have still worked. Of like General Swanwick could have shown up, talked to Lois, and be like, the world still the world still needs Lois Lane. Like you need to get back to work. Blah blah blah. And then he walks through the doorway and turns into Martian Manhunter, and the scene works better. And then also like the scene at the end where Martian Manhunter shows up, he's like, hey, if you ever need me, I'm around. And it's like, well, we fucking needed you yesterday, bro, and you were just
Yeah,
like,
where were you then?
so
dude?
he was there before the big fight and he was there after the fight, so I have to imagine he was on Earth during the fight and he was just hanging out, not helping. I call it the the Yoda effect in Empire Strikes Back. Luke flies away to go fight Vader, and Yoda's just chilling on Dagobah, like, all right, have fun. I could totally go with you and help. I'm just not going to for no reason. Like, why, why does he not just go help? And that's
my theory on this is I think that post-credit scene was supposed to be Green Lantern.
It was,
and I think that
that's not a theory. That's true.
Right.
So, all
Okay,
right, so
that's what
Johnny,
I
if
thought
you don't,
watching it.
just quick
I don't
backstory
know.
before you get into it. Zack Snyder wanted to include John Stewart's Green Lantern in this movie. The studio told him no. They said you cannot use him because we want to do the Lantern Corps movie. Yeah, the Lantern Corps movie. So instead, he did Martian Manhunter. In the theatrical release, I doubt that he would have been Martha. I think that was a reshoot to just include him earlier in the movie for the fans, and then at the end. That's my big. I have a problem with that too. For the same reason
I'm okay
Joe has a
if he
problem
shows
with
up
it.
after the fight. If he's like,
Yeah.
hey, heard about the fight, I'm here now.
Yes.
You need me? I'm like, cool. I'm fine with it. But the fact that he
Yeah,
was
but he
on
didn't
Earth
love
during the fight versus Steppenwolf as
I
Batman's
have a
going
problem
around
with that
gathering
too.
heroes and
Yeah.
knows about it, and it's just like, nah, I'm not gonna help out.
Yeah, I have the
Yeah.
same problem. I think his appearance in the Martha scene, not that Martha scene, but there is a Martha scene. He shows up, and I think that kind of devalues the scene. I think it was a really good scene, really well performed, and
Did you say
I
that
think
name?
having it turn out to be Martian Manhunter is really like undercuts the emotion of that scene, and I wish that it wasn't in there. I think it would have been a lot better if he just showed up in the epilogue and he was like, man, I heard about this fight with Steppenwolf and I decided I have to come back now. So I'm here for you guys if you need me. I think I don't really care about like, oh, he was there. Why wasn't he helping? I feel like I care more about the fact that it undercuts a lot of the emotion of that Martha and Lois scene where you have that really well-developed relationship between two female characters. And I think Snyder's biggest weak point is that he doesn't necessarily do his female characters all that well. So as I was watching this Martha and Lois scene, I was thinking, oh, cool, we get this like complex, like emotionally investing scene between two female Snyder characters. And then it turns out, no, actually one of them is Martian Manhunter. And I don't even understand like why he had to be Martha in that scene. He could have, like you said, easily just been General Swarnick or whatever his name is and had that scene with him and Lois. I just think that really undercuts a lot of the emotion. But I like him showing up at the end. I think that's a cool tease for like what Justice League 2 could have been.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Fucking kill
you. That is a moment. I had it written down as one of my worst moments because the first time I watched it, I'm like, whoa, it's Martian Manhunter. But then I was like, that ruins that whole scene. Like, it does. That's horrible. Like that would not have happened in the theatrical cut, basically.
But it happened in the version
I
I
was
saw,
like,
and that's
what
the version
am I
we're
thinking?
talking about, and it was shitty.
Yeah, that I didn't like. I did like him showing up at the end. That was fine. Like, but I didn't like him being Martha. Why do you just now it's just clowns?
Yeah, Pennywise is a great DC character.
Pennywise could become Joker.
Pennywise is Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
We can have Lego versions fighting each other.
I'm just gonna assume
I should
every
just go
side
get all of
character
my
now
Batman.
in Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, every side character is Martian Manhunter, just
Well,
like
I mean,
showing
that's been a
up.
theory for a long time that Swanwick has
Well,
been
that
Martian
was
Manhunter
actually
this
his
whole time.
plan. That was actually like his plan was for. He told the actor that he's like, "You're going to be Martian Manhunter sometime after Man of Steel, not like during Man of Steel, but like his idea going into Batman v Superman was like, you're going to be Martian Manhunter." So he wanted to include him. That was like a for the fans. It doesn't work,
Not at all.
but it worked in the end. Like his one scene didn't work and his second scene worked for me. So it's like whatever. That's
And
fine.
his second scene didn't work for me because of the first scene. Where if there was no first scene, then I would be all about the second scene.
Makes
I do have to
sense.
say
Yeah.
that Ben Affleck did.
I also
look
don't
great.
like how he looked.
Yeah, like I said, all of the bad CG looks way better in the black and white version for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't really know why, but
And again, that's part of the CG they had to do in the redone
that's
thing.
partial.
I thought he looked fine. Like he looked CG, but I thought he looked fine. Like I forgive
I don't like
CG
the
a little
design
more
of
than
the
Johnny.
character. I don't like the little things on his face. I think those look bad.
I thought that
He
looked
looks like
fine.
a Star Trek character. He didn't look like Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, Martian Manhunter is in Supergirl, and he doesn't look too different from the Supergirl Martian Manhunter on literally CBS.
Yes, they just basically went with that like design. But I don't know. I like the design of Martian Manhunter in the cartoons, and this one just kind of felt like a dull, like a very bland version of that. That's just like feels like any other alien character. So I don't know.
Yeah, me and Bobby and Tristan talked about this after our non-spoiler review after we went off air. Like about the final scene where he was like, "Oh, I go by many names," and I'm like, "Okay, that's how they're gonna get around calling him Martian Manhunter, which is a name that really doesn't make sense." And also, when you want to appease a human male, being like, "Hey, my name is Martian Manhunter," probably not the way to go. And then he says at the end, "Oh, you can call me Martian Manhunter." If I was Bruce, I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm never gonna contact that guy."
Well, again, it's like Zack Snyder's thing of you have to come out and say everything. You can't let the audience just figure it out. You have to say Martian Manhunter. You can't just say, you can't leave it as people call me many names and then he flies off because Zack Snyder doesn't want anyone to be like, who was that? Like, you need to have the character name in there. It's the same problem that I have with a lot of the scenes in this movie that we talked about. And it's just like a Snyder problem that I think that's why. Like, you need some subtlety in that scene. Martian Manhunter, don't ever refer to him as that name. Like, you don't ever need to. Maybe after he helps the team, you have someone come from like a distant land and he thinks Martian Manhunter's a villain and is like, we call him Martian Manhunter because he hunted us. Like, he took out my people. Like, you can introduce that later. But like, I don't know why he would ever, like, why would he introduce himself to a man as, they call me Martian Manhunter. No big deal. I'm here to help. I have like the most villainous name of all time, but like, I'm a good guy. Like, it'd be like Two-Face being like, you can trust me. They call me Two-Face. And you're like, I don't believe you.
No, I didn't like that line either. Like, again, like, it's one of those things, like I said, I love the movie, but I can forgive its couple, like, its flaws that I see. And a lot of the moments, it's more like it's just a moment where it passed very quickly. It's like, well, that was dumb. All right, next thing.
And to me, it was just moment after moment.
And it was only very few for me. It was like both things with Martian Manhunter. It's I didn't like him as Martha, and I didn't like that line, but I liked him showing up. I liked the scene with Bruce, so that worked, and that was good. Like, I liked seeing him. But yeah, I can't really defend that one. That's not a great line.
Oh, and
is that Martian Manhunter?
Oh,
it's Buddy Christ.
That's Martian Manhunter.
He was Jesus.
Yeah.
We do have.
Jesus shows up to like the apostles. He's like, they call me Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, wait, we're gonna follow this guy? He's an alien and he kills people.
Yeah, we have a live comment from Michael. He says, "Wish Affleck kept his Boston accent for the Snyderverse. My boy Cyborg's wicked smart."
Wicked smart. He is wicked
That'd be
smart.
pretty great.
I feel like Ben Affleck looked really good in that last scene too.
I was trying to say that earlier.
That was
way
definitely
later. It was a
post-rehab.
reshot, but I was like, "Congrats, Ben Affleck! You're really looking good here. You lost that weight, looking clean."
Still
Good
has that
HBO show for
shitty.
you.
He looks a lot better.
I think it was a little unnecessary to have that scene where he takes a cardboard cutout of Lois Lane and throws it in the trash. Should you get that reference? Just rock bottom.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne.
No.
But then,
right,
I mean,
well,
at least he helped that basketball team.
all
I
right. So
thought
we're
that was
kind of
cool.
we're kind of devolving now. So are there like points that we want to specifically bring up? Because overall, it's just how you felt about the movie. Like, all right, how about this? Um, who out of you, and I know Tristan's answer, I probably know Johnny's answer, but would you be interested if it was at all possible for them to continue this story in any form, whether it's animated, comics, more movies on HBO Max? Would you want to see where this goes?
Yes. I mean, because you kind of said Tristan and Johnny, so I'll just answer and I'll
Yeah,
basically
you
say
go, and
they've
then,
kind of. I feel like the DC animated universe that started with like Batman or like the Superman animated show and Batman the animated series and like Justice League television show, that whole connected universe has kind of run its course. I don't know if it's fully over. They kind of go back to it every now and then and be like, oh, this animated movie is in that universe. I'd love if they were like on HBO Max. It's like, hey, here's a 90-minute animated movie executive produced by Zack Snyder that's like in his DC EU. And it's like, and that's kind of how this continues. It's just like
so
animated
yeah.
movies or maybe an animated show just on HBO Max that can be more, I don't want to say like hard R or anything, but like a PG-13 kind of show.
Yeah, and I'm all
Or
for
movie.
that. I'd be because so if it was at all possible, I would like to see that. I would like to actually see the live action versions, but I don't think that's like a reality at all. So my best version other than that is animated.
Yeah.
And I would like to see it because I'm curious to see if the story turns out to be something that I would have been interested in. Because his ideas sound kind of bizarre and it's like hit or miss. Zack Snyder is hit or miss for me, and I'd like to see if it hit because when it hits, I really do enjoy it. So Johnny, I know you didn't hate this movie and you didn't love this movie, but would you want to see at least where the story went?
I wouldn't be mad about it. I think I would never watch it if they were like, here's Zack Snyder's animated Justice League. I just would never care to see it. Um, but if they did another live action one and they were like, whatever, we're doing a Dark Side movie, like, and it's 4 hours again, like, I'll put time aside to watch it, even if I won't enjoy it much. Like, I would actually be interested to see it just because it's something else that we're not seeing. And I think if you do that, you can at least satisfy all the crazy Snyderverse people like Tristan happy. Um, and then you could just do your own things in the movies. I'd be okay with it as long as you are doing the movies right that are actually put on the screen, like coming to theater. If you just have Zack Snyder have control over HBO Max, like what does it affect me if it gets put on HBO Max and I can watch it on my own time? If I don't have to waste my time going to a movie theater to see it, like yeah, that's fine with me. If it came to a theater, I probably wouldn't even bother with it. But if it was on a streaming service, I'd find some time to check it out. Mainly because I feel like it's just something that's going to be talked about online and talked about with you guys, and I would just want to be part of the conversation about it. So I would watch it. Like if I had never seen Batman versus Superman, I would have watched the extended cut, but I just can't get myself to ever see that shit again because I can't imagine. Even like if you improve upon some scenes, that movie is never going to work for me. This movie was way better than that. This movie was more put together. It had some moments that I thought were bad, but in a more entertaining way. Like I joke about, like I talked about the moments I didn't like, but it was more of me thinking they were laughably bad, and I enjoyed that. Like I had some fun with the scene. I had fun picturing Cyborg being like, "Mom can't drive, Dad. Your fault." Like I thought that was funny, and I laughed at the joke that I made to myself in my head. But it was never like a Martha moment where it was like,
Yeah.
now sure that's memed and there's some funny things, but at the time it was just like I felt like rock bottom as like a superhero fan. I was like, what am I watching? And there was nothing in that like that in this. Like I just like watching it being like, why is there so much slow motion? Like this is wild that this is allowed to happen is more fun than some of the other things. So yeah, if they made a Dark Side movie, I would be interested in seeing what he ruined, how he ruins Injustice. Like that would be funny to me. Like if he put that on screen. But I otherwise, because I don't know if we'll ever get like an actual Injustice story. But yeah, have Zack Snyder shit all over it. But like I'll watch it, and you can have some weird scenes where Batman, at the end slits the Joker's throat. Like whatever, You know, like give me some weird shit at this point, and I'll at least check it out.
All right, Johnny, with some backhanded compliments. So Tristan.
That's about all I got for this.
Look, I'll be the first to admit that this movie is definitely not for everyone. I wouldn't even think like this Snyderverse is for like most people. I think it's very much Zack Snyder going all out in his style and his way of storytelling, and that works for me. It works for some people, but I'm not gonna like expect everyone to like that. You know, when people like Johnny, you give a bunch of criticisms, and for pretty much all of them, I'm like, yeah, I see why you would feel that way, and I understand like why you had those criticisms of the movie, and if I don't, even if I don't necessarily like had the same criticisms. So with that being said, I definitely feel like with that, there's no room for this in like a theatrical release. I don't think you give Zack Snyder like hundreds of millions of dollars and say, okay, go make Justice League 2 for like $300 million and put it in theaters. I think
Just have
HBO
Cyborg give him the money.
yeah, Cyborg can hack Warner Brothers and then make the Snyderverse happen. You know?
It'd be perfect.
But I do think HBO Max had a huge hit with this. I think they didn't expect it to be such a big hit, and it hit a lot harder than they thought it would. It had a huge impact on their user base, a huge impact on like their active users who are watching and using the service. So I think the future for this could be on HBO Max. I think, you know, we talked about Ben Affleck looking good as finally out of rehab, and I think give him a Batman miniseries. He was like a 6-episode thing. Ben Affleck comes back as Batman, fights Deadshot, and maybe that's like the last you see of Batman is Ben Affleck, and maybe you get like some HBO Max content out of this. I think that's the best direction. If I was Warner Brothers, I would say, okay, sort of like how Disney's doing it. They have like the Marvel movies and they have like the Disney Plus universe on the other side of it. So I think you could have like the HBO Max version of DC stuff is like the Snyder inspired kind of movies. And you have like the Ben Affleck story, you have the Deadshot story, you have stuff that even if you leave like, oh, let's bring David Ayer back and have him do like a Joker miniseries, whatever they want to do, just that could be something interesting.
No, bad idea.
No, bad, Tristan. Okay, real quick, because Tristan mentioned it, we haven't talked about what's wild to me about the Joss Whedon thing is, okay, whatever. He reshoots 90% of the movie, basically, whatever he did. And, like, okay, you have, like, you can see that you have Superman come back with no shirt, and basically you have the same scene, but we didn't completely reshot it, so the entire scene is the fake mustache CGI. Well, but in this one, it's the actual scene, which is weird. But like, you don't have it in like the head turning scene is actually just like what Snyder cut. But if you watch that scene in Whedon's, like that clearly he either just reshot that basically entire scene or took things that they cut away from this, because while it's similar, it's completely different. And the other thing he did with that was the post-credit scene of Deadshot talking to Lex. It's the same scene, but completely different dialogue. So they just took basically like, we didn't shoot that scene. That was Zack Snyder's scene. But instead of pulling like the most interesting dialogue, he just pulled like the second or third takes or whatever. Like, that's just wild to me that like, that wasn't just something we didn't shot. Like, that was Zack Snyder's thing, but he used all different dialogue. I think is kind of wild.
Yeah, I definitely think this feels more consistent. You mentioned like all that kind of weird, like almost whiplash. Like you're going from like a cool Snyder scene to like, well, I think it's cool, but you're going from that to like a Whedon scene. And no matter how you feel about Zack Snyder stuff, I feel like when you watch the original cut of Justice League, you can feel that tonal whiplash. You can feel like the styles don't quite line up. And I think the best positive for this is that it feels consistent with the rest of the universe, and it feels like it isn't just this reactionary response from a studio a little to like just giving people what they think they want, and clearly it didn't work. So I think this works a little bit better just because it feels like it fits within the universe. And I mentioned I think HBO Max is the way to go. I think you keep this totally separate from what they're doing in the movies. They're starting to slowly but surely get their movies back together. Shazam was well received. I think the new Suicide Squad is going to be pretty well received. I think they don't want to risk that by messing with it and bringing in all this Snyder stuff. I think Flash is going to come out. They basically confirmed it's going to be a Flashpoint type thing. Ben Affleck's going to be in it. Michael Keaton might be in it. And I think that's the way to go. Like, you have that way of, in that movie, you can sort of lock away the Snyderverse and have it be this totally separate thing that doesn't even affect the movie universe. And you can have that go on with an HBO Max once in a while. People want the Ben Affleck Batman movie bad, but I think the best way to do it is just give them that miniseries. And I think keeping these universes separate is definitely the way to go. I'm not the person who's going to be like, cancel everything in the DCEU and just keep letting Snyder do his thing. I think maybe let Snyder do his thing on HBO Max, but I think
Greenlight that
DC
Gareth
has
Evans.
their shit together
Yeah,
finally,
separate
so
the
let's not
universe.
mess with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Greenlight that.
Bobby
Gareth
was
Evans,
trying to say
whatever.
something, but he was freezing a little bit. So Bobby, try to say whatever you were gonna chime in on and see if it can come through.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me now? Because I can see
Yeah.
myself cutting out. But so basically, what Joss Whedon did for a lot of those scenes, like the Superman coming back scene, is shoot little insert shot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he cut out
So
again.
insert shots and then
What he was gonna say is he was gonna shoot some insert shots and reshooting a lot of the close-ups, like when you see Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor talking with Deadshot. The wide shots are probably Zack Snyder, but they wanted to change it up. They didn't want to set up the Ben Affleck movie anymore because that wasn't probably going to happen. They wanted to. It gave Jesse Eisenberg new dialogue, maybe use some ADR to kind of change the dialogue of that scene. So it's kind of very interesting. I feel like whether or not you like it, it's just a fascinating way to watch these two different directors taking on this almost the same script, but just in totally different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there any scene or anything like in this one that we didn't get to that you guys wanted to kind of talk about? I feel like we addressed a lot of the characters for the most part. I thought
Alfred was a boss. I loved Alfred.
I like that line where Bruce Wayne introduces Alfred. He's like, "This is Alfred. I work for him."
Yeah, that was.
I feel like that little line just establishes their relationship pretty well.
Yeah.
I think overall, like Ben Affleck doesn't work at all for me as Batman, but I think he's good Bruce Wayne when he's talking to Alfred. That's the only time I'm like, I get what they were going for with this character. Otherwise, I think, especially because you have such high stakes in this movie, that Batman just feels pointless. Like, I hate all the scenes of Batman with like the alien gun shooting things. I think is terrible, and takes me out of it. It doesn't seem like very Batman, but I think him talking to Alfred is the only thing that I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. But I like them together.
I also liked towards the beginning when they're on Themyscira and Steppenwolf finally shows up in his first scene and he says something, "Oh, I feast on your fear," or "I smell your fear," or whatever it is. And then Hippolyta has that line where she's like, "Amazons, show him your fear," and they like simultaneously say, "We have no fear." It felt very badass. I like that Steppenwolf's introductions you see that he's very much like a big villain. I think he's fighting against the Amazons. We didn't talk too much about like that moment, but I think sure it has a lot of slow-mo, but I think it's very cool. I think it gives them something to do, and I think it really establishes Steppenwolf as like a threat that he could take on all of these Amazons, even though they put up a fight. Like in the Whedon version, they just kind of get wrecked instantly. And I think in this they put up a fight, but ultimately it's like nothing compared to Steppenwolf. So I really like that introduction of him.
Also, I think I remember this being kind of discussed when the first like the Whedon version came out, but are the Amazonians wearing like way less clothes in this than they are in Wonder Woman?
I know that was the thing, but I don't remember. I don't remember how much clothing they're wearing in comparison. I can't remember.
I watched Wonder Woman once, and I never rewatched it, even though I liked it. But I feel like in that they at least don't all have exposed chest and short skirts.
What if that was a Joss Whedon thing that Zack Snyder got yelled at for?
I feel like it's just having seen 300. I think it's a Zack Snyder thing because he also has all the scenes of Aquaman taking off his shirt and really focusing on that. Which okay. So Aquaman rescues the guy in the boat, right? And he doesn't have a shirt on. And then he comes to land and he has a shirt on. And then he takes his shirt off before he goes back in the ocean. Where is he getting all these shirts? Does he just have like a bin of shirts somewhere?
He keeps them in Davy
does he
Jones'
just
locker,
keep
man.
shirts and clothes all over? And why doesn't he take his boots off?
I like Davy Jones' locker as an answer.
There we go. Yeah, Davy Jones' locker. It's literally a locker full of Aquaman's clothing because he just throws it away off to the side, and then people smell it and keep it and sing about it.
Sing songs, you know.
Yeah, it's that I thought was very funny too. Of just like, oh, man, every time he has to be shirtless, and then he has to have a shirt on land, and then he has to be shirtless when he goes back into the sea, and I don't know where he's getting these clothes.
Yeah, if I can get a point before my internet goes out. I liked overall as a thing that I didn't mention, Darkseid's presence and how that affected Steppenwolf as a character. Instead of just him being a weird, crazy guy that says mother to everything. In the first one, he
should have said Martha instead of mother. What if they were called
Martha
Martha boxes?
Martha boxes. Yeah, but basically he's trying to be back in the good graces of Darkseid, and I think that kind of presence helped the movie, and I enjoyed that for sure.
But here's my thing, and I mentioned this, but we never really discussed it, so I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. Why? Okay. Darkseid should remember, because they mentioned that he's taken over 10,000 planets. This is the one planet he's ever failed at taking, right?
And it's also
he just forgets that, which is wild. And then Steppenwolf just happens to come across it. Steppenwolf's whole motivation was killed when they revealed that like he just kind of found this out. I think it would have been a really cool character point of this is the planet that Darkseid could not have taken or failed at taking. I'm going to do it to earn his good graces. So all of that, what Bobby mentioned of the good graces, completely failed to me because it was just Darkseid forgetting. And they're just like, even if you take Earth, like you still have a long way to go. Like, because they don't know what Earth is. But like he mentions there's no more Kryptonian. He mentions there's no Lantern. Like they know about the planet. So why wouldn't they know that this is the planet that Darkseid had been to before? That was a huge issue to me.
The point was it was supposed to be, and this is a wishy-washy, like I think they would have had to describe this better in the next couple movies.
Yeah, he cut out again.
I'll admit though, that's something that didn't work for me either. I think it doesn't really make sense to me that Darkseid would totally forget about Earth and totally forget like, oh, that's the planet I couldn't take. I think it makes a lot more sense if he had Earth on his like vision board or something. He's like, oh, here's the one planet I want to take back. And Steppenwolf comes and he's like, oh, I'm going to prove myself by taking back that planet. I think when you think about it too much, a lot of that villain plot just starts to fall apart. And I'm sure they would get into it more in the sequels, but like this is a movie that still has to work on its own. And I think some of that stuff doesn't necessarily work here.
And also, it's the one planet with the anti-life equation that Darkseid's been looking for this whole time, and he knew it had it.
But he knew about it.
He knew about it back then. So, that's the one planet he never would have forgotten about.
Yeah, I feel like Darkseid knows, like he should have known about Earth, but had never dared to, take it over again. And then Steppenwolf takes on the mission because he failed Darkseid. He betrayed him, and he wants to earn his good graces back. He's going to go take over the planet that Darkseid always failed at. And I feel like that could make Darkseid's motivation to come to Earth in the next one better because Steppenwolf came close. And Darkseid's like, well, if that guy could do it, I'm going to go back to Earth and like get revenge on them.
Yeah, and I think they give that enough of an explanation initially. Like they overcomplicate it by adding in a lot of stuff they didn't necessarily need to in Darkseid's thing. Like you could have already had it like, oh, Superman finally dies, and now finally Earth's not protected. Finally, Earth is open and vulnerable for attack, and now they're going to attack. The Amazonians have fallen. The Olympus, not Olympus has fallen, but Atlantis has fallen, and these united defenders of Earth are now shattered. And I think that is enough of a motivation to get Steppenwolf there. I don't think he needed all of this. Oh, Darkseid was here and he lost, and now he's like always wanted to take it back, but he some reason forgot about Earth, and this gets overly complicated. But I know Bobby had some kind of explanation for it, so I would like to hear that.
If I can try to talk, but basically that's one thing that didn't fully work, but I needed more explanation essentially. But it's like thousands of years ago he had this one planet that he couldn't quite take over, and it was kind of
he cut out again.
Damn. Bobby's getting like half his point.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to like type it too, but like basically he didn't know the anti-life equation was there. They did establish that.
Oh, okay.
And did they?
And yeah, they did, because Steppenwolf says it's here. It's on.
Okay, but here's what the fuck is the anti-life equation?
Yeah, because if you read the comics, you know what it is, but like they don't set it up at all in the movie, and I had to Google it to like reconfirm. Basically, it's this weird comic book thing that like once you like know what it is, you realize that life is pointless, and you basically forces you to like somebody else's will of just to, it basically
is the reason he could make.
So it's what makes Superman go evil, but like based on this movie, other than them saying the anti-life equation, it just seems like it's the thing that when Darkseid smashes his sword or whatever on the ground, and then all of the like the design comes in, like with the magma and stuff. That to me seems like whatever the anti-life equation is, that's what it is. So Darkseid knew that's what it was, because the only reason Steppenwolf knows that the anti-life equation is there is because he reenacts what Darkseid did by smashing the ground with his axe, and then those same markings appear. The markings are what they set up as the anti-life equation. So Darkseid knew that it was there because he seemed to do that.
Can I try to get my what I was trying to say in pieces? All right, so it didn't fully work, but the idea was that it was a very insignificant planet that fought back that he never.
Well, there's the piece.
Awesome.
All right, try again.
He was very.
Never mind.
Okay.
This really doesn't want Bobby to explain it. And I think that means that the world knows that there's no actual explanation.
It's not a great explanation. And I was trying to say what he was going for, but that is one thing that didn't.
Anti-life is one thing I'm willing to kind of shrug off, because I feel like that was something they would have explained a lot more in the sequels. Like, you just established, like, oh, what's this anti-life equation thing? I wonder what that is. And then in the second one, you get, I would hope you get a lot more of what that actually is.
Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, what he's trying to go for is he's heavily wounded from this fatal attack, almost fatal attack, and he wasn't fully.
Yeah, the universe just doesn't want Bobby to talk about Darkseid.
Yeah, Bobby, you're not allowed to defend this.
I'm not allowed at all, and I'm not even trying to fully defend it. I'm just trying to explain what he was going for.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that either. Because that seems to be everyone's defense to me anytime I mention something bad Zack Snyder does. They go, well, this is what he intended. And I'm like, well, it didn't fucking come across that way. And that's how I feel about all of his movies. That's like people defending the Martha scene of like, well, he intended it to be like the name just snaps Batman back. Like, look up John Campea defending that scene, and it's all nonsense bullshit. But like, that is the people that are like, well, it's just people giving Snyder too much credit. And I feel like that's what people like to do. And I don't get it. Like, I do not get what Zack Snyder has done to earn that from people. But apparently people like to defend Zack Snyder and tell me what his intentions were, even if they didn't come across that way. And that I disagree that that was the intention.
And the one storyline that definitely would have got cut in the 3.5-hour version, because I thought it would go somewhere and it didn't, is like when the janitor or something got attacked by the fucking flying thing. Mind blanked on the like Darkseid's minions.
Parademons.
Parademons. I can't. I tried to say it like 5 times, but it's not working.
My mind blank. But yeah, when that janitor, whoever got kidnapped or attacked by the parademon, and he made the drawing, and then it was shown to Gordon, and he kind of referenced that it looked like Batman, and there was kind of like a back and forth of whether it was Batman that attacked him, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna that storyline's gonna go somewhere, and then it just didn't. So I'm like, why was this even in the script? Because apparently like that storyline was just not ever gonna go anywhere.
Also, the worst joke in the Christopher Nolan movies was, so that's what that feels like when Catwoman disappears. Why did Zack Snyder feel like he needed to like triple down on that by having everyone disappear except the Flash? And him be like, well, that was rude. I thought that joke was like, I said everything the Flash does in this movie made me cringe. That was the ultimate cringe-worthy moment. Because I was like, they already tried to do this joke once that failed, of Batman in Batman voice alone being like, so that's what that feels like with Catwoman gone. Why did they need to do that again? Like,
when Christopher Nolan did it, that was a reference to. Oh, I have it right here somewhere. The Kingdom Come.
Pulling out the receipts.
Yeah,
it's from Kingdom Come, but like that joke falls flat in the movie.
Yeah, because it's Superman that does it to Batman in Kingdom Come, I think.
Yeah.
When they're in the Batcave. I couldn't find it, but it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, but that joke failed once. You don't need to do it again. And then they do it in this one, but like it's even worse. And I'm like, how did you make that scene worse? I don't need another joke on them disappearing. Like, just have them all gone, whatever. But like, why does Cyborg know to disappear? He's not that rude. Come on, man.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that running joke is like the worst part of superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's
so
how is
get
that
it
even
out of
possible?
here. Yeah, it doesn't make it. Never has
Like
made
to me, the
sense.
joke would have been funny if Batman was gone and all of them were.
Everyone else was
everyone
there?
was there, and Gordon turns around and he's basically like, "What are you guys doing here?" That would have been how I would have played that joke.
That would have been better. That would have worked much better than everyone is gone except the Flash, who the fastest guy
Who
is
can
there,
run
and he's
in
like,
instant.
"Oh, I didn't notice that all these people left, even though I'm faster than them." Yeah. If Batman was gone and everyone else was there, and then it's like Batman's like, "Where's everybody?" Or like,
Gordon
"Why
was
did
like,
they
"What are
follow
you
me?"
guys doing here?" I thought you were gonna leave with him.
Yeah, he's like, every time I turn my back, I just expect you guys to be gone.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a bad scene.
J.K. Simmons as Gordon is just like a weird casting choice looking back now that he's back to being J. Jonah Jameson in the MCU and like this franchise isn't going anywhere, and it was just like he's too good for that role at this point. He's had like 3 scenes.
Bring him back for the Ben Affleck Batman miniseries on HBO Max. You know, that'd be pretty cool.
There you go. I am super excited though. Like, I'm so excited for the fucking Batman movie that's coming out, the Matt Reeves one.
Yeah.
That like this
Me
one
too.
is just like filler until that happens, but like.
And then it got pushed back like over a year now.
Yeah, it's brutal. But
it was supposed
I think
to be
DC's
April
in an
2021, and now it's May 2022, I think, or something.
Yeah, they're in an interesting place now. I feel like they're at a point where they genuinely could like revitalize their image among people, because this went over decently well. Like people were at least like, okay, it was better than the last one, and people I think will be excited for the new Batman. Of course, that trailer was a huge hit on social media. So was the Suicide Squad one. I think 2022 is going to be a telling year for Warner Brothers and DC. I think they have the Flash, they have Batman. I think that year they have Black Adam. They have a lot coming out that year, and I think that's a year they could reset this universe and really set their tone for what it is going to be going forward. So I'm just really interested to see after this what the next step is for Warner Brothers. They have a lot of directions they can go in, and I'm just really curious what that direction is going to end up being.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what they do with Black Adam.
They're definitely putting a lot behind it. They took over all of Times Square, like every billboard, just to announce the release date of the movie. That, I mean, not a shot against WB. I mean, that's usually how movies go. Of like when you announce the release date over a year out, it gets changed. So it's like basically they spent a shitload of money just to remind people that a movie was happening. That's over a year away.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they announced that movie so long ago. Like, they cast Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam, like, 10 years ago at this point. I remember he posted a picture of him and Henry Cavill. It was so long ago.
People say it was 2014 when he originally got announced. Someone found an article back from 2000, and I think it was 2007 when he was actually originally cast as Black Adam.
Yeah. That's when he was originally like talked about. He's been working with WB for a while.
He's been working with WB since 2007 on a Black Adam movie. And it's now going to come out in 2022. It better be
good after all that. Like it better be. Black Adam is a cool character. I don't know. Like I think he could do something good, but I'm worried that it's The Rock as Black Adam. I'm worried that he's going to be played off as like anti-hero, maybe kind of a good guy, but they need to go full on Joker and make him the evil, like as evil.
He's
as
not. He's not going to be.
I don't think they're going to be.
So he's going to be an anti-hero because he's played an anti-hero a lot in the comics, and they're going to do that. There's no way that he's just a villain in his own movie. I would love it, but I don't think they will.
I mean, but you also have to look now with the success of like the Joker and other things like that.
Yeah.
That
I hope they do.
Could do
I
it.
do.
And like Venom wasn't the greatest movie, but it still did pretty well financially, and like
Venom is more.
Venom was
more anti-hero in the comics than Black Adam. Yeah, a few times like has been, but he's most famous for being a supervillain, being with like the Legion of not the Legion of Doom, right? The Legion of Doom, is that right?
Yeah,
sounds like
that's a wrestling group.
No, I think it's both.
That's right. It is both.
Yeah, that's right. So like he's known more for being the bad guy. So
and also you have Justice. They cast the entire Justice Society in that movie. So like, I doubt he's going to be working with them. He has to be working against them.
I'd be curious if he showed up in Shazam as like a villain in Shazam, and then he's a villain in that movie. He's a hardcore bad guy, but then in his standalone movie, you get a little bit more of his rationale and his motivation. That could be kind of interesting.
I think Black Adam comes out before Shazam 2, so I could be wrong.
Well, never mind.
I can look
Like,
it
yeah,
up.
it should be you do a Black Adam movie, and then he's the villain in the next Shazam movie. Like, that's how it should work.
But he's not, because Helen Mirren, for some reason, is... Yeah, Shazam 2 is 2023.
Huh.
But
I
he
know
could
we
have
had
a...
a pandemic, but DC needs to get their shit together, man. Why do you need so many years between every movie?
Yeah, it's 4 years between Shazam and Shazam 2. Granted, coronavirus might have delayed it a year.
Yeah, so if it's 3 years, I guess that's fine. But like, the Dark Knight trilogy was
It was 3
4
and then
3 years
years.
and then 4 years.
Three, then
So
4.
yeah,
It's been going on 2 years now since we had Avengers Endgame, and now they still haven't given us Black Widow. You know.
that's
Well,
true. But
there's
that
a
was supposed to
reason for
come
that.
out.
Yeah, that would have
Also-
been out like, almost a year ago now.
What's
Yeah.
that coming out in like July?
Yeah, something.
Uh,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
July something.
Yeah, and it's like Godzilla Kong. It's theaters and HBO Max, or not HBO Max, but Disney Plus.
Well, it's
but it's
Disney
like
Premiere.
the Premiere Access.
Yeah.
It's Premiere Access. So
You want to pay $30, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you guys
My
know
thing is,
now
like, if you
that
do,
if you ever catch me paying $30 for a Disney Plus streaming movie, just come to my house and kill me because I've been replaced by something that is not me. I'm clearly Martian Manhunter. So if I'm on Twitter
So you
saying
wanna
like, oh
kill
look, I
Martian
dropped
Manhunter?
I'm not
$35
fucking
on
with
Black
you.
Widow.
your name Martian Manhunter, I'm not gonna mess with you because you're clearly
just bring
a,
him back.
super
She'll be
villain.
good.
But yeah, I think with Bobby's internet dying, we can kind of
Yeah, we
can
haven't
kinda
really
wrap
been
this
talking
up.
about Justice League for a solid like 10-15 minutes. We've kind of been talking about the
Or
future
yeah.
of Warner Brothers and DC.
a while.
You guys get any
in
final
a
thoughts?
world.
You wanna
What's he
go over?
say?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
All right, Bobby,
We
your
live in a
internet might be.
society.
Yeah. Which he did
Might
never
be
actually say
stable.
in the movie. That was
He
completely
did. That
shot
was
for
just
the
a trailer.
No.
Yeah.
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 Bobby, any final thoughts unless your internet cuts out again?
Basically, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I really did love it, but
All right, he loved it, and then his internet cut out.
And he
Yeah,
left.
He
there's
said,
no
"I
buts.
loved
It was
it,
perfect.
but," and then his internet cut out. So we've been hacked by Zack Snyder, who didn't want to hear.
but I
anything.
can see why it's not for But I can see why it's
Oh.
not for everyone.
Oh,
There we
okay.
go.
All right, and
Now, suck it, Snyder.
or I'll go to Johnny. Johnny, final thoughts. Well, not a more positive. note.
Final thoughts. Overall, this movie is kind of it's just like large and pretty dumb. I cannot understand anyone defending Batman v Superman, but I can totally understand why people enjoyed this one, and I think that's a big improvement from film to film. I also do think that I enjoyed this one because I saw the Whedon one, and that was terrible, and this one was better. I do think that might differ my opinion on this. If we never got the Whedon version, I don't know what my thoughts on this. If I had seen this in theaters and yeah, like maybe it's 3 hours instead of 4 and you cut out some of the stuff, I can't imagine myself enjoying it. But for what it was, I had some fun with it. You know, I sat through it. It was 4 hours and it didn't feel like 4 hours. Like the first 2 hours dragged and then the last half was pretty entertaining. So I think they could have gotten to that point quicker. You could easily cut 24 minutes out of it if you just don't have everything in slow motion. But as Michael mentioned, but yeah, overall, I would say this is maybe like a 4 out of 10 for me. Maybe 4.5 on a good day, but I'll never go back and watch this again. I don't think there's maybe some scenes, but I doubt it. So even if it's available on streaming forever, like I can't imagine myself going back and watching it. But that's also how I feel about just even like a lot of super movies I enjoy. So like I liked Wonder Woman, but I've never gone back and watched that again. I like a lot of the MCU movies, but there's plenty of those I've only watched once. So yeah, I think that I think being at home for this helped. I think being on HBO Max really did help this one, because I think if I was sitting in a theater, I really would have felt the length. But sitting at home, being able to pause it, like I couldn't do it all in one sit. Like I had to get up, I had to go make some food and come back down like halfway through and then watch it. Like, But I think, like, again, we talked about if Zack Snyder was to continue making DC movies, throw them on HBO Max, and I can watch them on my own time. I think that'll work. Like, I'd be into it. I think even if I won't love the movies, I think I'd like just more DC content because I love the characters. So even if I don't love what the director does with them, I want to see someone's take on them.
All right.
So I'd be down for it.
Yeah, and we all during the non-spoiler review, we all gave it a rating out of 10. What would your rating out of 10 be?
I kind of said like I'll say a 4.3
Okay.
out of 10.
All right, 4.3. I gave it a 6. I think Tristan gave it an 8, and then Bobby gave it a 9. For what it was, there was like a asterisk on there for what it was.
You can't asterisk it, Bobby. Full compared to real movies. What would you rate this?
Well, I mean, it's hard to go because everyone has their own rating system. So I felt like I liked it more than Tristan did. He gave it an 8.5, so I gave it a 9. But basically, if
Bobby gave it
every time he's
4.
about to say something negative about the movie, his internet cuts.
All right, Bobby gave it a 6.9. We can move on.
All right, Tristan, what are your final thoughts about this classic cinema film?
I'll definitely admit it's not for everyone. I can totally understand people not liking it. I can see a lot of the flaws people have. And if you're not sold on Snyder, you're not sold on his direction for this year, not going to love this. You might think it's a bit better than BVS. You might think it's a better movie than the original cut. But it's not going to change your mind on Snyder. It's not going to change your mind on BVS. And as someone who has a shrine right here to Snyder and to his DC movies, I was really all in on this. And I had a great time watching it. I think it has flaws. You've gone over the flaws ad nauseum on this podcast, and I'm not going to deny that there's flaws there. But I had a great time with it, and I think it was very refreshing and very different from what we've seen in the genre. And I was just happy to see something different from what we've gotten already, something that was unapologetically stylish, unapologetically like a director's vision. I think we see a lot of times in this genre, they feel like committee movies. They feel like just doing what can appeal to the masses as much as possible. And I think the most interesting superhero movies are stuff like this and stuff like I recently rewatched Thor Ragnarok, and I think it's sort of similar where they just gave a director who has a very specific style, a character that's pretty established, and let him do his own thing with it. And I think this feels like that to me. It feels like all of its flaws are just flaws in Zack Snyder's style. And you mentioned you're not going to rewatch it. I think it's something I will rewatch on occasion. I watched it over a couple of times over, but that was mostly because I wanted to be familiar with it for this review. I don't know if I would have done that normally, but it feels like something that I'll revisit. I don't revisit superhero movies very often, but I think like the Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, BVS, Justice League kind of, I don't know what you call it, like a 4-movie series kind of all feels like a one part of a whole. And I definitely have that be something I revisit, especially if HBO Max does continue with this. If like they come out with a Snyder Cut 2 or they come out with an animated series that follows up the story, I would probably go back and be like, okay, let's give another watch to Zack Snyder's Justice League. But I don't feel myself being like, oh, I'm going to throw away 4 hours of my day to watch this yet again. Something that I'll have great memories of after how many years of build-up. I feel satisfied by it, and I'm glad people liked it more than BVS, more than Justice League. So I walked away pretty happy with it. I'm glad it came out. I'm glad they let him do his vision. I'm glad they let him do his cut, all 4 hours of it. And let's give David Ayer the next one.
Yeah, let's not. I watched it. It was fine. I enjoyed the 4 hours that I watched it, and then the other 4 hours where I was kind of half watching it the second time I watched it. But those are my thoughts. I don't need to go on and on, just to say I thought it was okay. If you like Zack Snyder's movies, you'll like this movie. If you think Zack Snyder sucks, you'll probably think this movie sucks. Kind of how this movie is. But in regards to future scheduling on this stream, or on this channel, or whatever it's called on Twitch, on Fridays, Tristan and I are going to do a review of Falcon and Winter Soldier Episode 3. Anyone else is available, you can hop on. These usually last about 40 minutes or so, depending on, what there is to talk about in the episode. If you want to see our past reviews of episode 1 and 2, they're on here. They're on YouTube. Next week, I don't know if we have a day yet, but we're going to go back to our main show, movie Changeup Fight. we did something a little different because we're into April. Obviously, April has April Fools. Normally, how it works is the judges, they pick the 7 movies, they pick the 7 rules, and then they give it to the 2 competitors. The competitors have to match up whatever rule they think works with what movie. But being April, we wanted to mix it up a little bit. And the judges assigned the rule to the movie they think would work best before they gave it to the competitor. So the first week it was, Johnny assigned the rules to the movies that I have to do, and Tristan assigned the rules to the movies that Bobby has to do, and that's how we will be competing. We had no control over what rule went with what movie. It'll be interesting to see what Tristan gave Bobby, and then the week after that, we're going to do the opposite, where I gave Johnny the rules for the movies he has to do, and Bobby gave Tristan the rules for the movies he has to do. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And then I believe in 3 weeks from now, we are going to do another Mount Rushmore, and we are going to focus on comedy. So we have various categories within the comedy genre. I think we have like best comedic performance, best comedic side characters, best comedy duos, best dramatic performances by a mostly comedic actor. So it should be another good episode. I really enjoyed our last Mount Rushmore. So come check us out. We're Movie Changeup. We host a podcast once a week, sometimes more. It is what it is.